Texans offense, 1 week, no touchdowns. Not a good debut for first-year offensive coordinator Bobby Slowik. He answered the bell, kind of, from the media on his biggest mistakes. However, perhaps the biggest one that he made was not brought up. Plus, CJ Stroud on how he gives DeMeco Ryans what he wants on Sunday. Let's go inside the locker room.
Yeah. It's the Locker Room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker Room. Yeah.
9 points ain't going to get it done. Ain't going to win too many games scoring 9 points in the NFL. 3-pointers can win basketball games. They damn sure cannot win football games most of the time. It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2 Central on Sports Radio 610 and the Odyssey app. Top place to go for in-depth Texans coverage and the pulse of what's going on with the Houston Texans. Jonathan Grenard, thanks to him for stopping by the show today. If you missed that, check that out on the Odyssey app. It was really good talking to him, and it's really good watching the defense, quite frankly. Defense was the story of week one for the Houston Texans. DeMeco Ryans, the defensive coach. Defense looks pretty good. Offense, not so much. A lot of reasons why. The man who oversees the offense, Bobby Slowik, spoke on some of his mistakes. Not the biggest one, though. We'll get into that a little later on. Please subscribe, like, right along. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Top place for Texans digital content. We got you covered. So week one for the Houston Texans was interesting. You had a little bit of a record-setting performance for CJ Stroud. There was one thing he did that's never been done. CJ Stroud becomes the first rookie QB in NFL history to make a week one start with 45 dropbacks and not throw an interception. This courtesy of the great Warren Sharp and Sharp Football. However, Damian Pierce, just 11 carries in the run game, kind of non-existent. Maybe that had to do with the 81% shotgun. They were in shotgun 81% of the time. Could have been that. Could have had to do with the offensive line. Or could have just had to do with Bobby Slowik not doing what he should do. And if you listen to him, that is the case. We'll hear him in a second. But first, let's hear from CJ Stroud. DeMeco Ryans has come out and said, hey, we want more tempo. We want to increase the tempo. Now, does that mean that they want to get to a point where they function like a normal offense, where you have 10, 12 seconds when you get to the huddle instead of having to call timeouts and look confused? Or does that mean they want to, run a little bit of no huddle and go up tempo? That's an interesting question. And here's the answer from CJ Stroud on how exactly you execute that. Here's CJ Stroud meeting with the media in anticipation of the Texans' home opener against the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday.
What goes into that? Is that just practice? Is that practicing, getting the calls in the right way or hearing it from Bobby? What goes into speeding that up from the game operations team?
Yeah, just practice. I mean, everything takes practice. Things don't happen overnight. And even though we would love them to, creating a successful offense is it takes patience, and that's something that I feel like, of course, no one wants to hear. Even I don't want to hear that, but it's the truth, and it's just being better on my part. I have to control what I can control and be as best as I can, getting guys in and out the huddle and things like that. So I think just practicing harder and making it game like as possible in practice, because you can't really mimic a crowd like Baltimore, a crowd like a away NFL game. You got to go out there and do it. But you can try to mimic that, and that's what we did as best we could, and now we're going to learn from that. So just practicing better and just getting better on my part is what I got to do.
Right. So maybe it's as simple as, they're on the road. They're in front of a very loud crowd, a sold out crowd. And, maybe it naturally becomes easier to get to the line faster for CJ Stroud and company because you're not on the road. Bobby Slowik, offensive coordinator for the Houston Texans. He's got two obstacles in front of him that I think need to be taken into account when speaking on Bobby Slowik and evaluating what Bobby Slowik does, even if, I'm not going to say when, if he gets things going in the right direction. Number one is the experience. He's never done this before. Some people, they immediately start calling plays and they never look back. More times than not, in any walk of life, you're going to go through some sort of struggles. There's going to be some sort of growing pains. So experience needs to be taken into account, and personnel. Bobby Slowik, the Texans did not invest in a number one receiver. They weren't able to. When you have that many needs, you can't solve them all at one point. And offensive line, they did invest heavily in the offensive line, but at least in the short term, and we don't know if Nick Caserio is good at evaluating in the interior of the offensive line. That might be another issue on itself for a completely different episode of the Locker Room here on YouTube. But right now, depleted offensive line maybe can't do as much as he would like to do. So I do think those two things need to be taken into account when it comes to evaluating Bobby Slowik. It is the Locker Room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. Please subscribe, right along, and let's hear from the man himself, Bobby Slowik. Let's start off right off the top, Coach. Now he doesn't get asked about his biggest mistake. I'll get into that crap a little later on. Y'all know who I am. Hashtag podium critic, etc. But let's hear Bobby Slowik talking about his biggest mistakes. We're going to go through 4 mistakes that fans are talking about. I think the first question is going to be asked by Stutz. Next question is going to be asked by Bajani. Then you'll hear Big Sarge, and then you'll hear Aaron Wilson ask about his 4 biggest mistakes. So salute to them for getting it started off the right way. Here is Bobby Slowik. Let's start with mistake number 1, courtesy of Cody Stutz. The 4th down situation. The 4th down substitution where Bobby Slowik, he tried to substitute, so then the ref got to stop the play, and then it was game over after that. Here's Bobby Slowik explaining that.
On the second 4th down, you guys hurry up to the line. There's also a substitution. The officials stop the play. What went into the thinking there with subbing, but also trying to hurry up?
We were trying not to sub, and I think we had somebody come like 2 yards onto the field. So
All right, well, that's not good. I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse.
they got us in that regard, and the official held the play. It actually wound up being beneficial for us. We saw the look, and they
And so did they.
kept the same look, and we called, the play we wanted to call. We just got to execute it a little better, but we got what we wanted, and we just really across the board through the whole game. I know DeMeco mentioned it, CJ mentioned it, a lot of the offensive guys had mentioned it. We just had a lot of self-inflicted wounds, and that starts with me. From the operation to getting in and out of the huddle to just being clear and on our assignments and just executing our stuff. And it was a hard environment. It was tough. Baltimore's not an easy place to play, and they do some really, really tough stuff. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of chaos. And we'll be better at that this next week.
Okay. So there you go. Not sure that explanation makes me feel great. But hey, I think that goes back to, the obstacles, the experience, et cetera, getting the message across to your team in important situations, practice that you heard CJ mention. So there's the explanation there on the 4th down. The tempo, something DeMeco's talked about a lot. What has Bobby Slowik got to say about that tempo? Sean Bajani is about to ask him that question. Let's hear what Bobby Slowik has to say about that.
Said a number of times that he'd like to see the operation in terms of tempo, getting in and out of the huddle, pick up. I was curious from your point of view, is that something that you feel like is going to take time in terms of the efficiency there with you being in a new role, players in a new system, or is that something that we can see a quick turnaround?
Yeah, I think like everything, all that stuff takes reps. Nothing replaces a real, actual, applicable rep of that. But it is something, there's been a noticeable difference in practice even for us this week, and that includes me. How fast the call's getting in, how clear the call's getting in to help out everyone else, and then the whole operation from there speeds up. So I think it's one of those that I don't believe that's going to take very long. I think that's something we can definitely control, which is why we have to fix it. We control what we can control. And then there's other stuff that, maybe it might take 8 weeks to grow into, but that one I think we can fix pretty fast.
8 weeks. What the hell's going to take 8 weeks? I mean, 8 weeks. What are we talking about here? Tank Dell use. A lot of people frustrated with Noah Brown in the use. I'm not going to lie. I did the highlight reaction earlier. It's kind of fascinating to see, the 2 third down plays to Noah Brown. I'm not a guy who's like going to crunch the tape or anything like that. There's people much smarter than I with much more time than I that are crunching tape. Not the fake tape watchers, but the real tape watchers that can maybe explain why you want to get the ball to Noah Brown. But there's a big movement of people around here that would like to see more of Tank Dell. He was the best receiver in camp. They've said great things about him. Didn't see him as much. Kind of seemed like Noah Brown was a little more involved than Tank Dell. Noah Brown goes to IR. Do we see more Tank Dell now? Big Sarge is going to ask him about that. And I think this is something that fans are really interested in.
Coach, with Noah Brown now, will we see more snaps from Tank Dell this weekend? Is there any reason why he didn't get a lot to start off the game last week?
Yeah, we have 4 receivers we feel really good about, and we want to make sure that when we have those 4 receivers, we put them in the position that, like I've been saying, they're in a great position to do what they do best and succeed. And we feel like we did that with Tank in the game plan. And then now that we're down one of those, obviously we need people to step up, next man up in the wide receiver room there. But, Tank will always have his ops every week that he's available. He'll be in, he grinds, he does everything. He does teams also. He's definitely will be a factor.
All right, so let's get into some good news, bad news before we hear Bobby Slowik speaking on his 4th mistake. The good news for Texans fans is that a year later, when it comes to offensive frustration, we're not talking about Rex Burkhead getting 19 touches in week 1. So I guess there's some sort of progress there. You're not talking about the ghost of Rex Burkhead getting nearly 20 touches. That's the good news. Bad news is that in a year's time, we're still talking about why Damian Pierce is not getting more carries. 11 carries in week 1, most of any Texan. Some people probably feel that's not enough. Bobby Slowik, believe it or not, actually agrees with you. Here's Bobby Slowik talking about that, courtesy of Aaron Wilson.
The running game, and as DeMeco said, you want to be not one-dimensional, you want to be multi-dimensional. What are some things you guys can do, and how much is the goal to get Damian and all the backs more involved and have a more effective running attack? Obviously, Baltimore having some very good linebackers.
Yeah, that was a tough challenge last week. They got really good interior D-line players. They got really good linebackers. And we still had some opportunities there in the run game. Again, I always especially this last week, to me, everything as a starting point comes back to me. I wanted to stick with the run longer, and I got away from it there at the end of the game. DP should touch the ball more than he did. I don't think anyone in here has any question about that. I mean, we all want to see Damian run. So that's definitely something we want to do. Mix in Motor, mix in Boone, mix in Dare, all those guys, and that's our starting identity. We want to be. We're here to run the ball, and everything kind of plays off that. Now, we couldn't really always get it going. Sometimes it was a play call issue on my part. Sometimes it was an issue as far as just executing self-inflicted wound stuff. So, again, we'll be cleaner on that this week.
All right, there you go. So more Damian Pierce. So there's that. It's always easy for a coach to go up there and say, I got to be better. We've seen it all the time. We've seen it with Bill O'Brien, but then you would get some sort of, well, it wasn't all horse bleep on offense. Okay, it was. You didn't score in the first half and you had mop-up duty. I think this was a good question from Cody Davis, hearing from Bobby Slowik, offensive coordinator for the Texans, on what specifically can you do? It's one thing to say, I got to be better, but what specifically can Bobby Slowik do?
Like I said, just efficiency and speed. To me, that'd be the number one thing. How fast we can get the play call in, how clear we can be with it, how on it we can make sure the rest of the coaching staff is as far as personnel substitutions and what's going on in that regard. I think it's just a trickle-down effect, right? So from there, as we've been doing in practice this week, it's noticeable.
When you kind of going back to
All
what
right.
you just said about having the ability to see great interior defensive line play and great linebacker play in Baltimore, it's a different style of defense, but they present the same challenges with guys like Shaquille Leonard and DeForest Buckner.
Now Cole's doing his list all the players stuff. So they kind of lost it after that. Slowik did speak on CJ Stroud, which we'll get to. I'll skip Cole's football card
For the
question.
guy, part of it's very similar.
Right.
Can you kind of just quickly talk about the challenges that a defense
More Cole, goodness.
QC for 2 years. They look at just
With CJ Stroud,
There you go,
personally,
CJ.
Your takeaways overall, or things you did well, things you want to see do better.
Yeah, I mean, we've already hit it multiple times as far as the operation, just all the way across the board. I think it starts with me, coaches, CJ, everyone in the huddle. That's a whole offensive thing that all of us have to clean up. That aside, I thought he played well. His first game in Baltimore, he did some really good things. He made some plays that were outside the structure
He loves
when
CJ.
things weren't always going right
And
around
he
him.
loves him.
He was very, very efficient and on time within the structure. He was able to see the field. I mean, it was really, as far as just going in and being able to play football, it was what you would ask for in the first game for a rookie quarterback. We just all have to do our part, control what we can control better.
All right, there you go. That's Bobby Slowik. Now notice, and this was the disappointing thing for me, and maybe this is just a me thing. He was not asked about the play where Dieter went into the game and lined up at right tackle, and CJ Stroud was strip sacked on the play after George Fant left the game. It was one of the biggest plays of the game, quite honestly. Texans, plenty of time left, trying to get it back down to one possession. CJ Stroud actually in a decent rhythm at the time, or looking pretty good. You bring in a guy who's not a tackle, you put him at right tackle, there's no tight end or running back helping, and he gave up a strip sack. What the hell went into that? I would have liked to have known that. Now, beggars can't be choosers. I thought there were some good questions. I thought he answered a lot of his mistakes. Sometimes momentum gets killed when a football card question comes in where we're just listing players and asking stuff, and then you do it twice, and the momentum kind of gets sucked away. But man, I would have really, and the opportunities passed, and I think a lot of fans would have really liked to have heard what the hell went into that, because I thought it was the most important play of the game. But who knows? We did hear him speak on some of his mistakes. We heard what CJ Stroud had to say. We'll continue to look ahead to this game throughout the week, and then don't miss the post-game show, the live stream, #1 post-game show that you can go to, as well as In the Loop tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central. Appreciate everyone for coming through. When it comes to this Texans stuff, whether Bobby Slowik faces the music about one of the biggest plays of the game or not, when it comes to this Texans stuff, we're all in this together. Have a good one.
Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too. Landlocked, got the game in the headlock. Localize every time, can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not too. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube.